What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel, and in this YouTube series we're going to be taking a look at how to build this for function calculator in Python using Tkinter for your graphical user interfaces. So let's get into it. Part 2 in building a for function calculator using Tkinter in Python. So if you didn't see episode 1, I recommend you check that out. That's where we defined all of the buttons you see on the screen and the output label. And if you don't want to follow along with the whole series, then I recommend you at least pause this video and copy these lines of code in, because we did define all of our buttons as widgets in Tkinter, and then we defined their row location and column location on the screens and messed around with formatting a little bit so that it would stretch to fill the screen, so that today we can dive into actually adding the functionality to each of the buttons. So essentially, if you think about this calculator, the buttons 0 through 9 are really doing the same thing. They're just doing it with one different character. So we're going to create one function for adding 0 through 9 or a decimal point to your numerical entry. And then we'll create a second function to write whatever operator is clicked, the division, multiplication, subtraction, or addition. We'll add a third function for actually executing your math with the equal sign. And then finally, we'll do a fourth function that'll really be the easiest to just clear everything out. We'll do that at the end. So today we're going to be looking at those functions, and let's get rolling on them. So the first thing we need to do is we need to add some variables to actually execute these functions. So if you think about what we're doing is we're updating the numbers that are entered on the screen, but if an operator is selected, we also want to show that on the screen. So that means we're going to be mixing numbers and characters, which should mean in your head we need this to be a string value. So we're going to have the first number and the second number as strings, and that's what we'll use to display on the screen. But then we also need those as either integers or floats, but since I think it would be a more useful calculator if we have it capable of handling decimal values. So let's go ahead and make first float and first number as strings and integers. And then the second thing we need to do is we need to track whether or not an operator has already been selected, right? Because that's going to tell us whether we're modifying the first or the second number. And then we also need to keep track of what the operator is. The only way you could get around needing to have a dedicated string variable for what the operator is if you used 4 different functions for the 4 different operators. Since I like the idea of just creating one function for all the operations, we're going to use a string to store whatever operator was selected. Okay, so these variables should allow us to do essentially all of the math that we need for this calculator. So the next thing to do is going to be start defining these functions. So we'll call the one that's going to be you select a number or the decimal point. We'll call that change. And the way you call a function from a button that has a parameter passed in, you do this command equals lambda colon, and then you call the function. So since we're passing in to modify at first the string variable, just make sure you put that 7 in quotations. Otherwise, you'll need to use like the str function to convert it once you get in here. So you could just pass it in like this as an integer, and then you could do string conversion in there. Those are both equally valid. It just saves you a little bit of time if you just put it in quotes when you call the function. Okay, but so we'll do 7 first, and then we'll go ahead and just kind of copy that that line, and we'll put it in all of our buttons that need that one right after. But so a few things that we need to use inside this function that I don't want to specifically pass in as parameters. That would just take a little while. I'm going to call a lot of globals. So we're going to use first number, we're going to use second number, and we're going to need to check if the operator has been selected. So we'll pass operator clicked in. And then we'll also need to pass in the operator string. And is that going to do it? And the output string. So the reason we're passing the operator string in is if the operator has been selected, then we need to be displaying on the screen the first number and the operator that's been selected and the second number. So we need all of those passed in, and that means that we're going to be modifying the output string as well. And so the actual code that we're doing in here is pretty simple. We're checking if the operator has been clicked or not. And if it hasn't, then what we're doing is we're just adding the item that was passed in, right, to the first number, and then we're going to output string dot set to first number. So essentially what we're saying is you haven't picked an operator yet, so we're modifying the first number, and then that's all we're going to display on the screen. But then if the operator has been selected, then it's going to be second number that gets the item added to it. And then the output string is a little bit more complicated. And we talked briefly in the first video about why this output string is not just an equals to, it's a dot set. That's the Tkinter StringVar. That's how you use a label that gets updated consistently throughout the thing. If we were going to use just a string variable that we wanted to update on the screen over and over again, you'd have to keep overwriting the label with a new label, and that would be really tedious, and you'd have a whole bunch of hidden widgets behind the screen. So what you do is you use this string var, and then you have to do dot set throughout the program. So instead of having default in the beginning there, we'll have it blank, which is really what you'd want from your calculator. And then this is not just going to be first number. So after the operator has been clicked, we want the first number plus the operator string plus the second number, right? So that's going to be showing the actual mathematical function that we've been punching in. And so for now, I think that's it, but we will want to, let's see. So let's go ahead and run this. I'll copy this so that it works for 7, 8, and 9, just so that we can see that all the buttons are working and doing different things. And right now there's nothing that's going to make operator clicked. So essentially we should just see 7, 8, and 9 when we run this. We should see the buttons writing onto the screen. So let's see if we did that right. 7, 8, 9, 8, 9, 7. Very cool. So that's the first function. Let's go ahead real quick before I forget. I also think this calculator would just look a little better if it was in bold. So to do that, you just do font equals and then bold in quotations. Bold. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and copy just that bold piece onto 8 and 9. And then I'm going to copy our change function instruction here onto all the rest of the numbers real quick. 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 0, and the decimal. And then make sure, of course, to go through and change the character for everyone. Otherwise, you're going to be clicking 3 and getting a decimal. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Now, the next thing I think we should do is we should actually update the operator. So in a similar fashion, we are going to call a function with a parameter, but now we will call operator, and we will pass in the parameter of whatever operator was selected. And so we have to define that operator function, but I'm going to go ahead and link it up to all of our operator buttons first. Subtraction and addition. Okay, and so let's go up to where we made our change function and let's make a operator function. And again, we can call the variable getting passed in item, it doesn't matter. So now what we want to pass in, just like before, we need a few globals. We'll want operator selected, operator clicked, and then we need the actual operator string. And then we're going to need to pass in the first number and the second number. So global first number, global second number. Alrighty, so the reason we need those numbers is we have to check whether or not a second number has already been entered, right? Because in theory, if you typed in like 2 plus 2 and then you hit plus again, the way a calculator would work is it would first do the execute function, like what you do when the equal sign is pressed, and then it's gonna do like the math of 2 plus 2 equals 4, and then put your new character on the screen after it. So we want this to work just the same way, but let's go ahead and put that into code here. So if second number is not equal to blank, right, that means something has been entered for the second number. Then we're going to execute. That's what we'll call the equal sign function. This is what we're going to do. We haven't written it yet, so for now we'll just pass. Okay. This is kind of an easy way out when you know you want code to work a certain way, but it's not written yet. Just go ahead and put it in here. But then we'll do else, meaning the second number is blank. And we will say the operator string is going to be equal to the item that was clicked. And actually, I'm going to get rid of the else. We want this to happen whether or not the second number is blank. So the operator string is going to now be equal to whatever operator was just selected, right? And then the operator clicked is going to become true. And then the output string gets set, and then the output string gets set to have the operator string and the, and we gotta do the dot set, remember? So then the output string is gonna be the first number plus the operator string. So essentially what we said in here, once we do the math that's going to include the equal sign, we're going to, if there are two numbers already entered, we're going to do the mathematical function that was already displayed, and then we will add the operator string to the end of it. But because we haven't done our execute yet, we're going to just leave that blank, and we'll come back and uncomment this out later. But then the remaining things we do are we say, okay, now an operator has been clicked, and then we update the string to have whatever item was just clicked, and then we display that on the screen. So let's go ahead and see what is happening now. Let's say 75.4 times 6. All right, so that's sweet. You can see it started adjusting to a second number when we put a character in there. Now what's going to happen now is you see when I click it, it's overwriting the character, which is great. But we would ordinarily want the math to execute too. So like if right now it said 75.4 divided by whatever, and then we clicked minus, we would want that function to execute. So let's go ahead and put in the function for the equal sign. And that, as we said, we're going to call that execute. And we're not going to need to pass any parameters in there because execute is going to be just sort of specific to the equal sign, or we'll embed it inside of the other function. So execute. Bad time to be dyslexic. And let's go ahead and take a look at this function. We'll make it bold. We'll make everything bold. It's just a better calculator, easier to read. All right, so let's go where we've been defining these functions, and let's make execute. Wow, I am having trouble spelling execute today. Okay, so we need a few globals. We need global first number. We need global second number. And then what we're gonna do is actually we're gonna just call first float equal to a float of first number, and we're gonna do the same thing for second number. So I guess the way I'm looking at it here, the only time those numbers actually need to be converted to floats is while we're actively executing. Otherwise, just displaying it is what matters. So it doesn't really need to be defined up above. I know we put them up there. You could probably clear out these floats that we defined up there because we're just going to use them inside the execute. But it doesn't hurt anything to have them up there. And so now what we need to do is we need to check the operator string and what it's equal to, right? So if it's equal to addition, what we're doing here is we're going to have first float plus second float. And then we are going to set the output string to the result of that. So we'll make another variable here. We'll call it result. And then we're going to have result set here. But what's kind of interesting too is we want to set the first number to be equal to the result outside of our if statement. So I'll get into that once. I'm going to copy the code we just wrote there for the plus, and we're going to do that 3 more times. First subtraction, and then it'll be first minus second, and then I'm going to go ahead and copy that whole thing for multiplication and division. And make sure you use the same characters that you called because we are checking strings here. So if you used like an X instead of a little star for multiplication, just make sure that that you do that same character in these. Okay, so that should handle all 4 of our operators, but then as I was saying before, what we also want to do is we want to set first number back equal to the result. And since first number needs to be a string, make sure you put an str on that. Because what we're doing is we're saying, well, you can keep using that number, right? That's super common on a calculator. You'll say, I want this number times this number, and then you'll continue going and do something else, divide it, subtract something else off of it, and then let's clear out the second number. That's going to be the second important piece because now we're storing all the information that's been entered so far inside of that guy. And since we're here, before we run it and make sure everything's working, let's just define the clear function as well. That's what will happen when you click the clear button. And it's really easy. We do need to pass a few globals in, first number, second number. We'll need to pass in the operator string, and we'll need to pass in the global of the has the operator been clicked, and then we'll need to pass in the output string. And essentially what we're doing, it's really easy. We say operator clicked equal to false. We set the operator string equal to blank. We set first number equal to blank and second number equal to blank. Blank is what I call nothing. And then we do operators output string dot set and nothing. So essentially when you press the clear button, we're just getting rid of everything. Command equals clear, and then font equals bold. So I think we'll see when we're running it, but I think we caught everything there, and I think what we built is a pretty sweet calculator. So let's take a look here. All right, 9.5 minus 3 is equal to 6.5, hopefully. Nice. Let's do times 6. Oh, I hit decimal 6. Okay. 5.9. All right, let's multiply that times 8. 47.2 plus 3. Okay, sweet. So the equal sign is working. Clear appears to be working. 3.2 divided by 6. And so now the last thing we did, right, is we need to make it to where if you hit minus at that point, it actually does the function. So remember, we commented out execute if the second number already has something in here. Well, now we can have that live and we can get rid of pass. So what we said in here, there we go. That should do it. Okay. So now if we say like 9.5, 9.6 plus 3, and we try to keep just rocking and rolling with our calculator before hitting equals, so we hit plus, there, it does the math for you, and that's pretty slick now. So like 12.6 plus 6 minus 3 minus 9.5, whatever. But you can see the calculator just keeps rocking and rolling without having to hit the equal sign every time. So there's definitely ways you could expand upon this. You could change formatting, you could change font size, you can make things different colors. You could definitely make that decimal point a lot larger using like font size 40 or whatever, easier to read. But we just built in, under like a half hour, we built a fully functioning 4-function calculator, and that's pretty sweet. So there's a good introduction to Python GUIs, graphical user interfaces. This is a good introduction to Tkinter and a lot of different basics in Python. So hopefully you found it useful. If you did, I really appreciate a like on the video, a subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a ton. And if you want to see anything specific in a future video, just be sure to let me know about it in the comments below. And if you had any questions, let me know about it on the comments below as well. And as always, good luck with your code, and thanks for watching. Thanks. Bye.